Pull up OpenRouter's usage charts and look at the top 5 models by token volume this month. 4 of them are Chinese. Not hobby projects, real coding agents and real support bots routing through the largest neutral router in the industry, at something like 61% of total tokens as of May 2026. NVIDIA didn't lose a chip fight to get here. Something quieter happened instead, and there's one number underneath all of it that explains why. Hang on to that thought. Okay, so break the stack into 3 layers before any of the hype gets attached to it. Chips at the bottom, Huawei's Ascend line, plus a scramble of smaller players like Cambricon. Models in the middle, Alibaba's Quen, DeepSeek, Moonshot's Kimi, Zipu's Glim. Distribution on top, Hugging Face and OpenRouter, where the actual usage gets counted instead of guessed at. 3 separate races. People keep talking about them as one war. You'll see it claimed constantly that Chinese labs already train their frontier models entirely off NVIDIA. Full stop, mission accomplished. That's not what the people building the models actually say. DeepSeek reportedly evaluated Huawei's Ascend chips for training and walked away unimpressed, according to CSIS's own reporting on the matter. Ascend still handles inference well. Training a brand new flagship from scratch, that's a different, harder job. And it's mostly still happening on NVIDIA hardware bought before the door closed, or smuggled in after. So the honest claim is, inference is moving. Training mostly hasn't, not yet. Here's the number everyone quotes, and it's the wrong one to fixate on. Huawei's newest Ascend 950 PR chip does 1.56 petaflops of FP4 math, a 4-bit number format that trades precision for raw throughput. NVIDIA's Blackwell chips do around 20. That's roughly a 13 times gap by one industry estimate, and it's real. But raw math was never the actual choke point. It's HBM, high bandwidth memory, which is just a stack of memory chips glued right beside the processor so data doesn't have to travel far to get used. China stockpiled around 11 million HBM chips from Samsung before the export door shut. That sounds like a lot. It caps total 2026 Ascend output somewhere near 250 to 300,000 chips, industry-wide, full stop. You can design a faster chip. You can't manufacture your way around a memory shortage you don't control. That's the number from the cold open, by the way. The token share on OpenRouter isn't capped by demand. It's capped by how many chips Huawei can physically finish building. So test the actual headline against that. Quietly winning the war, the title says. Fair to test that with real math, because on one measure it's true. 61% of OpenRouter's tokens, Chinese models, as of this spring. On another measure, it's not close. NVIDIA still holds 55% of China's own domestic AI chip market, per IDC, down from over 90% before controls started in 2022. But still, the largest single supplier inside the country everyone's told is defecting from it. 2 different wars. One's basically decided. The other's still being fought with actual chips in actual server rooms. So here's the fork, and it's not close for most people watching this. If you're building anything where price per token actually shows up on a bill, Kimi K2.5 landed at roughly 1/7 Opus's price on early benchmarks, according to MIT Technology Review. And Quen and DeepSeek sit in the same range. That's the rational default now, not the scrappy alternative. If you're inside a government contract or a regulated pipeline that mandates Western-hosted compute, none of this changes your options this year. And pretending otherwise is how you end up explaining a self-hosted Chinese model to a compliance officer who didn't sign off on it. And if you're just running one model on one card at home for fun, none of this fork is yours to make. You're not the customer here. The money backs the usage numbers up. ByteDance alone committed something like $5.6 billion, call it $5.5 billion, in Ascend 950 PR orders this year, with Alibaba and Tencent placing large orders behind it. That's real money, not press release money. Quen now has north of 200,000 tagged variants on Hugging Face, more derivative models than Google and Meta combined. Paul Triolo, who tracks U.S.-China tech policy at Albright Stonebridge, put it about as plainly as anyone has, that the export controls built the exact domestic industry they were meant to prevent. Not as good as NVIDIA's best chip. Genuinely better than almost anyone predicted 3 years ago. Now the honest part, because there are real asterisks stacked on top of each other here. First, training. Most flagship Chinese models are still trained substantially on NVIDIA silicon, one way or another, whatever the marketing around any single release implies. Second, memory. The domestic HBM roadmap depends on equipment from the same Western suppliers the export controls already restrict, which is a strange kind of dependency to build an independent story on. And the biggest asterisk, in late May 2026, the Commerce Department closed the offshore workaround Chinese buyers had been using to route purchases through Singapore and Malaysia. The loopholes shut. The chip gap didn't get smaller. It just got harder to quietly paper over, because this was never just a hardware story. Beijing's actively pitching open weights as foreign policy now, not a side effect of it. Malaysia's sovereign AI effort runs on DeepSeek. Singapore built its national model on top of Quen. At the World AI Conference this July, Chinese officials framed open source explicitly as the fair path for countries that can't afford to train their own frontier model from zero. That's the actual play. Give away the model, sell the chips in the cloud underneath it later, once everyone's already building on your stack. Critics of that framing have a fair point too, that a country running its public services on Quen or DeepSeek is still trusting infrastructure it doesn't control. Fair complaint. It's just not a complaint unique to Beijing. Every country running on GPT or Claude signed up for the exact same trade with a different flag on it. So here's where I land. And it splits cleanly in two. The chip war, NVIDIA is still ahead, by a real and currently unclosed margin, whatever a single spec sheet from Huawei claims this quarter. The adoption war, which model a developer actually reaches for by default, that one's already over, and it went to Quen and DeepSeek and Kimi, not to Llama, and increasingly not to anything with a Western logo on the Appy bill either. Two things actually worth tracking, not vibes. First, whether CXMT ships domestic HBM3E at real volume in the second half of 2026, because that single number decides whether the Ascend roadmap is real or aspirational. Second, whether one flagship Chinese model ships fully trained on domestic chips end-to-end, not just running inference on them, and holds up against an NVIDIA-trained rival on the same independent benchmark. Neither's happened yet. It used to be whether a Chinese lab could ship one model that mattered. Pull those open router charts again in 6 months. The question now is whether NVIDIA can win back tokens that are already routing straight around it.